The road towards a meaningful life is narrow and winding. And when you can't tell the road from the woods around you, it's all too easy to become lost. But sometimes, without knowing, we stumble back, and in a flash of recognition, we find our way again. For me, finding the way back was about learning to see the world again. And oddly enough, it all started with some sketchbooks and some colored pencils that I bought in Rome, of all places. Rome is a city I hadn't seen in over 15 years, and I hadn't been home to Italy in over 5. For half a decade, I couldn't see much of my family. Most important of all, my dad. Between chasing a career and getting trapped like everyone else during the lost years, I found it impossible to find my way back. And the last time I was on Italian soil, I was a very different person. I used to draw. A lot. I was never really amazing, definitely carried more by passion than raw talent. But I loved it. And every now and then, I'd draw something that wasn't half bad. And those rare instances meant the world to me. That excitement kept me going to life drawing classes or just drop-in sessions with a model. It got me stopping by local museums and art galleries, sketching everything I could. And when I could come home to Italy, it had me running around the entire peninsula, madly sketching the wealth of masterpieces and monuments that are around basically every corner. But when finding a decent job and then just surviving became my priorities, I stopped drawing. In fact, it was almost exactly after I'd come back to Canada from Italy the last time that I stopped. And outside of one very special person, life became pretty dull. And just like that, the clear path was lost. In any case, I had to come home eventually, and that's when I found myself standing in Roma Termini station with my wife. We had a few days before taking a train north to see my old man, so we were trying to figure out how to get a metro pass and make the most of our time in the Eternal City. And while we were weaving through the crowd and trying to figure out where to go, I just happened to pass by a moleskin shop. I doubled back almost right away, and I started having the strangest thought. This nagging voice in the back of my head kept telling me, "You forgot to pack a sketchbook." The thought hadn't crossed my mind when I was packing 2 weeks before. Why would it? I hadn't drawn anything for 5 years. And yet, here I was, stressing out over the apparent omission. So I figured it couldn't hurt to just pop in and maybe have a look. Unfortunately, the selection there left a lot to be desired. The best they had was a 3-pack of unrolled journals and a tin of colored pencils that were clearly made for kids. And of course, because we were in a bit of a tourist trap of a city, everything was crazy expensive. But that voice in the back of my head kept nagging me, so against my better judgment, I bought what they had and walked out, thinking that I'd probably just burned €40 on a flight of fancy. Not long after, we visited the first museum on our itinerary. It was a collection of antique sculptures and architecture for the most part. And while I was walking around, I came upon this badly damaged statue of a woman in robes. It wasn't anything remarkable, really, but I found that I couldn't walk away, and that nagging voice was back, and this time it was telling me that if I didn't sketch the statue right now, my drawing supplies would end up confined to my backpack for the rest of the trip. So I told my wife to give me 10 minutes, I whipped out the sketchbook, and was relieved to find a black pencil among all the others. And then I got to it, and after about 10 minutes, I had this drawing. It's nothing special, and you can definitely tell that I hadn't handled a pencil in about half a decade, but it's not terrible, and most importantly, I loved every moment of making it. And from that point on, for the rest of the trip, I made it a point to sketch at least one piece of art in every museum that we visited. In fact, I found my sketchbook was usually in my hand before we even bought our tickets most of the time. And while I was still pretty rusty, I was improving a little bit every time, getting a little bit faster, more precise, and having even more fun with every drawing. By the end of the trip, I'd caught the bug again. I remembered the younger Kevin who jammed tons of sketchbooks, pencils, and pens into his carry-on and spent most of his days in northern Italy just searching for museums with interesting collections to sketch. I remembered stopping at little cafes or restaurants with my dad and just doodling whatever I happened to see that day. And I remember how drawing had motivated me to chase after the Renaissance men of old that I'd idolized all those years ago. I found my way back after learning how to see the world again through drawing. An average human looks without seeing, listens without hearing, touches without feeling, eats without tasting, moves without physical awareness, inhales without awareness of odor or fragrance, and talks without thinking. Leonardo da Vinci. In our modern world, it feels like we're all adrift. We live like shades, barely there, with hardly a moment to spare for curiosity or creativity. And because of that, we forget how to see the world and instead settle for watching empty frames of it flash by on teeny tiny little screens. But if you make time for creative pursuits, and I think for drawing in particular, you can begin to see the world again. And more than actually see it. You can begin to know and understand the world as you capture it on the page. Drawing done well demands true observation. It requires you to recognize and comprehend everything from structure to lighting to proportion and perspective. But it's also tactile. To execute a drawing well, you need to pay very careful attention to how you move, steering your arm, adjusting pressure, speed, and precision as you create line and value. And unlike photography, which only requires you to capture things as they are, drawing requires you on a certain level to conceptualize things and account for their presence or influence, even if they aren't physically there in your composition. Here's a great example. Think about all the time that Leonardo da Vinci spent studying human anatomy. He filled reams of paper with sketches of muscles, bone, and the circulatory system. And when you look at his paintings, it's not like he's trying to over-render those details or show off his knowledge. But because of the deeper understanding of how the human machine works, you don't question the poses or the proportions of the bodies that he paints. They all just kind of work. Drawing basically allows you to understand things at a deeper level. Da Vinci didn't just draw the human body. You'll find everything from fluid dynamics to military engineering and botany to zoology among his sketches. Even when the limitations of his time or the poverty of his materials didn't allow him to actually make what he drew, he acquired so much knowledge and made that knowledge real, in a way. And people have done it centuries later, building his devices and testing them out. So when you look at drawing as a way to understand the world and give form to your ideas, it kind of becomes a gateway drug to endless curiosity and discovery. And I think through that, it'll lead you to a more meaningful life. Now, honestly, I'm not really good enough to tell you guys how to draw, but I think I can still tell you everything you need to know in terms of getting started. And really, it's not that complicated. Just find a cheap sketchbook with paper that can actually take a medium without smearing or bleeding through too much, and try to get a sketchbook that's not too big, because that can put you in situations where it's just too much of a hassle to carry it around, and so, you end up not drawing in it. In terms of medium, a decent mechanical pencil is a solid starting pick. They aren't messy, they're lightweight, and if they come with an eraser, you can obviously make corrections on the fly. And they are super convenient. Usually there's a little tab that you can use to tuck them into your sketchbook, and then you're good to go. With just those two things, you can get out there and start drawing right now. Maybe watch a few of the 1,000 videos on YouTube here that'll teach you the basics of drawing, just so you can be good enough to feel some satisfaction in your work, and most importantly, learn to identify and improve upon the mistakes that you will most certainly make. Like, full disclosure here, I used to hate drawing. I thought I was terrible at it. I was terrible at it until I took life drawing classes and learned a little bit. Then I made some drawings that were decent enough. That got me hooked back then, and that level of satisfaction kept me motivated to learn more and improve past my numerous shortcomings, which kept me drawing even more. It basically became the ultimate feedback loop. And beyond that, just find a subject that you enjoy drawing. It could be people, buildings, nature, or all of the above. Whatever it is, just set your mind to drawing what you love. Commit to getting better a little bit at a time, and the rest will just kind of come naturally. So look, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to say that drawing is going to make you a millionaire or solve all of your problems in life. It's not really about that. What I am trying to tell you is that learning to draw will help you live in the moment a little bit more and actually see more of the world around you. And if you keep it up, you'll find that the curiosity it inspires can lead you down a path of profound discovery and maybe even fulfillment. That journey is why I started this channel. And if it's a journey you guys would like to join me on, then I hope you'll subscribe and share this video around. I kind of hate saying that. I think it's super cringy, but if you want to have a dialogue with people, you do need to use the medium of the day. I really, truly believe that we should be out there chasing the ideals of the Renaissance and the men who made it great. And that's only going to happen if we share our knowledge and push each other to do incredible things.